I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, clearing the air. The EPA says there's too much smog. It's making people sick, especially kids, and it's calling now for tighter limits on air pollution for the first time in a decade. Also tonight, that new U.S. offensive in Iraq. The U.S. military admits most of the al-Qaeda leadership got away. A promising new treatment for Parkinson's disease.
It saved my life. There's no two ways about it.
And you've seen it on TV. Tonight, we'll take you inside the real CSI.
Sometimes I wish it would be that glamorous.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. The air we breathe is making us sick. The EPA says 1 out of 3 of us is at higher risk of health problems related to what's called ground level ozone. And tonight, the agency is proposing stricter limits on the pollutants that cause it. Unlike the good ozone layer high above the Earth's surface, which protects us from the sun's harmful rays, ground level ozone is formed when emissions from cars and industrial plants are heated up by the sun, creating unhealthy air. This map highlights those parts of the country where the problem is the worst, and it's worst of all in Southern California. For children there, just playing outdoors may be hazardous to their health. We have 2 reports tonight, beginning with Wyatt Andrews.
Faced with sobering medical research proving that ozone pollution is killing Americans, the EPA is proposing the first mandatory reductions in 10 years.
People with asthma, with lung conditions.
EPA Administrator Stephen Johnson says studies showing that even healthy 18-year-olds are getting sick from ozone, the chief component in smog, left him no choice.
I believe that the evidence is overwhelming. And that's why I propose to change the standard today.
Environmental and medical groups called this decision an important first step.
Do you think this proposal saves lives?
Absolutely. Anything we can do to reduce ozone, to reduce this really irritating and deadly air pollutant that's so widespread, will save lives.
But there was also criticism the EPA did not go far enough. The current ozone standard, which one expert compares to sandpaper in the lungs, allows the air to have 80 parts per billion of ozone, and the proposed EPA reduction calls for 70 to 75. However, an expert panel advising EPA called for a much lower standard of 60 to 70. Not only did the agency reject that advice, it invited industry to argue for keeping the current standard at 80.
It means that there's a lot of pressure to keep the standard exactly where it is, to keep it at levels that currently we know do not protect public health.
That pressure is coming from America's biggest power and energy industries. Industry spokesmen point out that dozens of American cities and every area shown on this map exceed the current ozone standards now. Even deeper reductions, they argue, would force up costs and cost jobs.
For one power plant, for example, the cost for installing compliance technology could exceed $100 million. So that's significant for just one facility.
For the Bush EPA, though, this is big. The same EPA accused of ignoring the science on soot pollution and dismissing the science on global warming is listening to the evidence on smog. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Washington.
I'm John Blackstone in Oakland, California, where that evidence shows up every day in the emergency room at the Children's Hospital here. Today, 15-year-old Demaria Wood is among the many kids coming in with asthma.
Does it hurt when you take a deep breath?
This is where the EPA's concerns about the health effects of ozone pollution, or smog, meet the real world of children struggling to breathe.
I mean, what kind of condition are they when they come in?
Oh, they're gasping for breath, many of them.
Bert.
18-month-old Walter Abram has had asthma attacks since soon after he was born.
When he has his attacks, you can kind of see his stomach flaring up a little bit right now. I cry. It's very hurtful.
Here in the emergency department of the Children's Hospital Oakland, some 5,000 children a year come in for emergency treatment of asthma. Well, the causes are complicated. There's no doubt air pollution plays a big role.
On days of high ozone, people with asthma are more likely to have symptoms of shortness of breath, chest tightness, and cough.
And the ill effects of ozone in the air go well beyond asthma. Studies done by researchers at Yale and Johns Hopkins show that smog can kill. In the 95 major urban areas studied, an increase in daily ozone levels was associated with more than 3,700 additional deaths each year from cardiovascular and respiratory illnesses. But the battle against ozone, the main ingredient in smog, has had some success. Los Angeles and other California cities are not nearly as smoggy as they once were.
We've made enormous progress in fighting ozone. It's gone down 75% in Southern California since 1990. We're still not where we need to be.
While cleaning up the air can be challenging and expensive, the costs of air pollution are not only counted in dollars. John Blackstone, CBS News, Oakland, California.
Meanwhile, there's a plan tonight to make the U.S. Capitol greener. House leaders are pledging to cut energy use there by 50% over the next 10 years. They plan to install more efficient lights, cut down on coal use, and have members and staffers switch to hybrid and ethanol-fueled cars. And speaking of cars, the ones we all drive could be more fuel efficient thanks to a deal worked out in the Senate today. Kelly Wallace has that story.
The Senate deal requires higher fuel efficiency standards for every car, truck, and SUV on the road, raising the current requirement of 25 miles per gallon to 35 miles per gallon by the year 2020, 10 miles per gallon in a little more than 10 years.
The 10 over 10 saves 1.2 million barrels of oil a day. That is just about what, by 2020, is equal to what we import a day from the Middle East.
The deal is the first mandatory hike in fuel efficiency standards since 1975. Environmentalists, fighting for tougher standards for years, hail the compromise as a win for the environment and the consumer.
Consumers are paying more than $1,000 a year in additional fuel costs at the pump. This is really going to help consumers drive farther on less.
But auto industry analysts say the last time Congress mandated fuel efficiency standards for cars, Americans gave up their station wagons and switched to heavier, larger trucks on the road. They could do the same thing this time.
They don't really want to change their lifestyle. They want to protect their family. Do you sacrifice the safety of your family and get a small, light vehicle in order to save a tree?
Automakers vigorously fought these tougher fuel standards, arguing they could cripple an already struggling industry. Now American automakers will have to wait to see if they become law. Kelly Wallace, CBS News, New York.
Turning now to Iraq, where it's been a deadly week for U.S. forces. The military today announced the deaths of 14 soldiers and Marines. In the deadliest attack of the past 3 days, 5 soldiers were killed yesterday by a roadside bomb, or IED, in northeast Baghdad. On Wednesday, 4 soldiers were killed in a similar attack in western Baghdad. Meanwhile, as the hunt for al-Qaeda continues, initial reports tonight show there might have been a missed opportunity. From the Pentagon, here's David Martin.
10,000 U.S. and Iraqi troops are trying to wipe out an al-Qaeda stronghold in the city of Baquba. But Lieutenant General Ray Odierno, the ground force commander, visited the city today and said most of al-Qaeda's senior leaders managed to escape, leaving behind a maze of deadly booby traps. A much smaller operation south of Baghdad went after another al-Qaeda stronghold, but the commander there knows that in this war there's no such thing as a knockout blow.
This is not the type of operation that wins any kind of war or battle in one day. This is about a battle to provide security for the people of South Baghdad.
American casualties are running slightly lower this month compared to last, but add in civilians and the overall level of violence continues to rise as al-Qaeda conducts a surge of its own. But Joint Chiefs Chairman Pace claims violence is not a good measure of success, even though the stated purpose of the American troop surge is to protect the Iraqi people.
So it's not about levels of violence. It's about progress being made in fact and in the minds of the Iraqi people so that they have confidence in their government in the way forward.
America still holds the technological high ground. Helicopters can chase down gunmen and jet fighters can take out safe houses. But Defense Secretary Gates is betting on the low-tech art of cutting deals with insurgents who have been fighting against the U.S.
If we refuse to work with or ally with everybody who's been on the other side of the fence, then the prospects for making any progress in Iraq are pretty slim.
days like today, it's hard to tell if any progress was made. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Egypt's government announced plans today for a regional peace summit to deal with the Palestinian crisis. It begins next Monday at Sharm el-Sheikh along the Red Sea. Egyptian President Mubarak will host Palestinian President Abbas, Israeli Prime Minister Olmert, and Jordan's King Abdullah. The U.S. will not take part, and Hamas, which took control of Gaza last week, was not invited. There is much more CBS News ahead, including why Lake Superior is not as great as it used to be. But up next, an experimental treatment for Parkinson's disease that changed one patient's life. In medical news, there is new hope tonight for people who suffer from Parkinson's disease, a promising new experimental treatment that can ease the debilitating symptoms. It's a gene therapy that doesn't have the side effects of medications. Up to 1.5 million Americans have Parkinson's. 50,000 new cases are diagnosed every year. Michelle Miller now with more on this new course of action.
4 years ago, Parkinson's kept Nathan Klein from his favorite pastime. Even walking was difficult. Today, he's back in the saddle.
I feel great. I swim, ride my bike, do everything that anybody that's normal can do.
Klein was a guinea pig, the first patient ever to undergo gene therapy to treat the incurable brain disorder, which affects as many as 1.5 million Americans, including Michael J. Fox and Muhammad Ali. With Parkinson's, part of the brain becomes overactive, triggering abnormal movements like tremors and stiffness. For the experiment, published in the journal Lancet today, doctors took a gene, packaged it into a harmless virus, and injected it directly into the brain. In theory, that gene calms down the abnormal activity.
Well, our hope is that this will in the future be considered the first major milestone in the creation of a whole new field of medicine for brain diseases.
Of the 12 patients in the study, all of them showed at least a 25% improvement. 5, including Nathan, saw their symptoms improve up to 65%. The trial group of 12 was small by most standards, but passed the safety test. The next rounds will be larger and are designed to show if the gene therapy's benefits are real and long-lasting.
I think it's a very important first step in gene therapy for Parkinson's. It's treating the symptoms of Parkinson's, not the underlying defect in Parkinson's.
It may not be a cure, but for Nathan Klein, it made all the difference.
It saved my life. There's no two ways about it. I'm better, I feel better, I act better.
For those suffering with Parkinson's, the results, no matter how preliminary, offer hope. Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
If you'd like to learn more about the symptoms and treatments for Parkinson's, you can go to our partner in health coverage, webmd.com, and search Parkinson's disease. In other news, Bob Evans, who turned a 12-stool restaurant into a giant chain, died today at the age of 89. Evans founded Bob Evans Farms back in 1953, which now includes 600 stores in 18 states. Coming up next, following the terror trail with the FBI and the real CSI. In a missing person case that's been getting a lot of national attention, hundreds of volunteers search rural Ohio today for 26-year-old Jessie Davis, a pregnant woman who disappeared from her home last week. The search organizer says cadaver dogs picked up on some odors, but so far, nothing has been found. Investigating cases like this one can be grueling work, not nearly as easy as it looks on those TV crime shows. Here's our justice correspondent, Bob Orr.
9/11 was the deadliest terror attack in history, but the carnage that filled the streets of Lower Manhattan was also the largest and most complex crime scene ever to confront the FBI.
On that day, a lot of people just ran downtown like everybody else and were trying to collect anything that appeared to be an item of evidence.
And Liz Rosado was among those racing to preserve that evidence. Rosado now heads New York's evidence response team.
so that we can dust for prints, lift trace or fiber evidence.
The FBI's real-life version, CSI.
If we can match it back to this car, you could place the car at the scene.
On television, forensic investigators juggle multiple crime scenes and then neatly wrap up cases before the last commercial break.
It's great to see it solved in an hour and a half an hour, and I like watching that too. But for the most part, it is very, very slow, methodical work.
Here, look down here, Jane.
But in reality, it can take 8 hours for an FBI evidence team to take photos, dust for fingerprints, and collect evidence from just one car.
This is basic police work. I mean, this is really at grassroots, trying to get the kinds of clues that will help you solve the crime.
Absolutely, the nuts and bolts of how a case gets solved.
A case like the terrorist bombing of the USS Cole. FBI evidence experts scraped explosive residue off the belt buckles of surviving sailors, allowing investigators to link that blast to al-Qaeda bomb makers. That was a victory in what's become the FBI's primary mission, counterterrorism. Unlike bank robberies and street crimes, terror cases often require evidence collectors to worry less about making a case and more about stopping the next attack.
You have to look at the circumstances and what is your ultimate goal. Is it a prosecution, or are we racing against the clock to prevent another disaster?
It's a lot of pressure on the 40 FBI agents who make up Rosado's team. And while it's not quite like television,
sometimes I wish it would be that glamorous.
Their work is critical, and the stakes have never been higher. Bob Orr, CBS News, New York.
Meanwhile, overseas today, Tony Blair held his last cabinet meeting before Gordon Brown succeeds him as British Prime Minister. And he got a standing ovation. President Bush's strongest ally in Iraq is stepping down next Wednesday after more than 10 years in office. Blair had nothing to say today about the president's suggestion he become a special envoy to the Middle East. And Britain's Prince William turned 25 today, but it wasn't just another birthday for the second in line to the throne. This one gained him access to roughly $13 million he inherited from his mother, Princess Diana. And under a law that goes back to 1772, William can now get married without the Queen's permission. Coming up next, why is America's largest lake disappearing? You know, you might not think something as big as a lake could just vanish, but that's exactly what happened in Chile. Here's what it looked like in March, a 5-acre lake in the southern Andes Mountains. But in May, most of the water was gone, replaced by a 100-foot crater. And the spooky thing is, nobody knows why. Spookier still is what's happening to Lake Superior, the greatest of the Great Lakes, is quickly becoming inferior. Its water level is the lowest it's been in 81 years, and that's causing all sorts of trouble for boaters and businesses. From Duluth, Minnesota, here's Cynthia Bowers.
At first glance, it's hard to believe Lake Superior is said to be disappearing. It's huge, but all along its 1,800-mile coast, you can see land where there used to be water.
All these used to be underwater.
At 21 inches below normal, the lake looks different, above and below the water line. Ron and Jackie Polomsky are being forced to move their boat from their old marina to one with deeper water.
We know there is a cyclic up and down of the lake. I mean, history shows you that, but not this low.
What are the biggest complaints that boaters have?
Well, out here, 2 sailboats have gotten hung up and needed to be towed. One guy ran through it and broke his props.
But the real complaint comes from commercial shippers. Every inch the water falls forces the freighter fleet to drop another 8,000 tons of cargo. It adds up to a huge loss, $1.5 million annually for each ship.
The vessel is doing just the same amount of work, but carrying less tonnage, so they're less efficient.
At nearly 32,000 square miles, this is the largest freshwater lake in the world. But over the last decade, its water levels have dropped nearly 2.5 feet. That's 16 trillion gallons of water just gone, enough to give more than 2,000 gallons to every man, woman, and child on Earth. And it's not just here. Water levels are down across the Great Lakes Basin, and experts are racing to find out why. The lake is getting 20% less rainfall due to an 8-year drought, and warmer winters have meant less ice cover and more evaporation. It is said man changes levels by inches, Mother Nature by feet. The question is whether man is affecting nature.
Within a couple years, they should be rising again. If they continue to go lower and lower, that would indicate to me that we are outside of the bounds of the natural pattern.
Scientists hope this is just a cycle and Superior will rise again. But with 16 trillion gallons to replace, it'll take time and patience on the part of those who live and make a living on the lake. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Duluth, Minnesota.
And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
CBS News. See it now, anytime, anywhere.